Photographs, witnesses to an instant moment in time. They signify accomplishments, togetherness, and milestones. They connect past generations with present generations, helping us to see the people and events who came before us. They're printed on a piece of paper, displayed on a wall, and nowadays up in the clouds. We hold on to photographs of loved ones lost, of pets we once loved, of photographs we wish we had never taken. Hi, I'm Nancy Clemens with Hanford Auction House, and our next guest with our Valley Recollection video series is Michael Semas. His popular Facebook page, Antique Images from the collection of Michael J. Semas, is followed by many. So let's take a walk down our local memory lane and spend some time with Michael.
Hi, I'm Andrew with Hanford Auction House, and today here we have a very special guest for our series Valley Recollections. He's going to be showing us his love for photography and antique photographs and how it started and what his collection's about and his passion.
Hello, my name is Michael Semas. I'm very grateful that I'm being interviewed today to talk about my interest in antique photography and how I've shared it over the last 11 years on Facebook.
So Michael, I have a question. How did the photography collection start?
Well, actually, what had happened was that there was a yard sale next to my house in Hanford about 18 years ago, in which the neighbors were selling off some items that they had collected over the years. And I went over to take a look at it, and in the collection of what they were selling were postcards of Hanford from 100 years ago. And I was really surprised. I thought, wow, these were made 100 years ago, and I really was interested in that, and I started doing a little research to find out where could I find more old postcards, and found out that there's these events called postcard shows that existed all up and down California. So I went to one, I think it's got to be more than 20 years ago, and went through this guy's box of postcards, and the first postcard I pulled out was of the original Hanford High School, the one that was torn down in 1975, and I just saw that and I went, oh my God, I'm hooked. So that's what started it all.
That was the first
like, oh wow, and I got the rush of like, wow, I didn't even know they made this postcard, and I was like, wow, I got to find more. So yeah, I found more.
That's amazing. So what do you think probably has been your best find?
I found at a yard sale in Fresno a group shot of the 5 individuals who were put on trial for the Muscle Slough tragedy. When they were released from jail in San Jose, they went across the street, sat down in a photography studio, and had a studio shot of the 5 of them sitting together. And it's a rather famous photo. I've seen it many times, but I actually found one at a yard sale in Fresno, and I was thrilled to find it.
Your heart must have been racing.
Oh man, you have no idea, because of the importance of those 5 gentlemen and how they affected California's early history and even affected it to this day. Yeah. And I won't go with that in this video, but there is a direct link between the Muscle Slough tragedy and how our politics are handled today in the state of California.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that must have been like the find of a lifetime, right?
Yeah, it is. It was a find of a lifetime. I always get joked around. I'll go into an antique store and the owner says, so you looking for the next Billy the Kid photo? Kind of joking around with me, and I'll say, well, how do you know I haven't found it and I just haven't told anybody?
Oh. So there's no undercover alias for you anymore?
No. No, in fact, I'm surprised by how many times I'll introduce myself and they'll go, do you have a Facebook page? I go, yes, I do.
So when the antique store owners see you coming, they must mark the prices up on the photos.
Well, no, I don't share with them what I'm looking for. So I've been very careful about that. There are a few people though that know what I'm looking for, and they'll price it accordingly. Sometimes they'll price themselves out of the market and I won't buy it.
So where did your love for photography in general, not just collecting, but where did that come from?
Well, I've always enjoyed looking at old photography, old photos to see how places looked, how people dressed, what events that went on more than 100 years ago. I joked around, I used to say my mother was the kind of the repository of the family history of all the photography, and I pretty much inherited all these photo albums where she had saved up photos of people, like their wedding photos. And they 100 years ago, you used to go to Powell's studio and take a formal shot of yourself in your wedding dress with your spouse in the photo, along with the best man and maid of honor. And she would have that in the photo album, and then in the same page, she would have the funeral card for the people that got married when they died 65 or 70 years later. And so it was all that, going through that and seeing that history, seeing the most important part of their event of their life in terms of their wedding, and then seeing their funeral card to see who was there. It just got me interested in looking more at it.
So that's really interesting. So how long has your family been in Hanford?
On my mother's side, my grandfather came to the Hardwick area in 1912, if I remember right. And my grandmother also came to the Stratford area in 1914. On my dad's side, my grandmother was born in Rhode Island, and my dad's father came to Burrell in like 1917, 1918. So over 100 years in the area.
So you guys were pretty early in terms to the valley.
Yes,
Really
well, the
big.
family, yeah, they were involved with the early agriculture. The Portuguese community was really, still is very large. It was a very large, separate minority group at that time.
What was it like growing up with this much family history already, having been in the
Well, I never really
community?
appreciated it. I used to get drug around to all these different places where my mom would visit these old people, and I'd be like, oh, I want to get out of here. And I regret it now, because now with my respect for history, I would have been asking them so many questions. I was lucky enough to be able to do that with my grandfather, who I asked him what it was like when he came here, and the story of him experiencing the San Francisco earthquake of 1906, where he was at, how he came here, where he lived. So there's a lot of facts that I only heard from him that, if I didn't ask him, I never would have known.
No one probably remembered it.
No one.
Gone.
And even my dad's father, I told him he told me how he got here, and when he got off the train in Fresno, he couldn't speak English, but there was a store that all the Portuguese would go to. The gentleman that ran it was Portuguese, and my grandfather told him that he had a job to look for in Burrell, the guy said, you see that light way off in the distance? He was pointing off over the horizon. There was a little light. He says, that's Burrell. And at that time, there was not the smog, there was not all the agriculture that existed around here. It was just prairie, grasslands, and then you could see Burrell from Fresno.
That's really amazing. So your family, have they always been heavily involved in the community?
They've been heavily involved in agriculture. In terms of being involved with the community, I would say to a lesser extent. My father was really involved with the Portuguese celebrations, and so was my mom. There was a lot of events in which the Portuguese community would get together for people to dance and sing, and in fact, I even have pictures of the family sitting around the living room with my uncles playing guitars and singing and having a good time. It was just that, it was before television, before the internet. So,
wow.
yeah.
So there's so much history that we probably don't even know, really.
Yeah, we were lucky. We had an aunt who did the family history for the Perry side, and wrote a book which is quite thorough in terms of its detail of not only my mom's life, but my aunts and uncles' life, and then my great aunts and uncles' lives beyond that. And so it's a priceless bit of history. I kind of laugh about it because I think one of my daughters had to do a genealogy event at school, and she just brought the book. So it's done. So anyway, it was kind of funny.
So how has Hanford changed ever since you've been young? How have you seen it change culturally and physically?
Well, I joke around by saying, you know, you're getting old when you watch buildings being built and then torn down in their same lifetime. And so, yeah, there's been a lot of changes since I've lived here. The town's gotten bigger, of course. Traffic has gotten a little bit worse. There's a lot more influx of people that don't really know the history of the town and why it was here and how it was developed.
So has there been anything that you found on your own about your family, like through online services, like just something you would have never known before?
Well, you know, the genealogy sites, you know, the DNA sites have been interesting. Pretty much everything that we are aware of that's on the websites we already knew. I did find out that one of my father's ancestors was born in British Guyana, which is in South America. And I'm thinking, what were they doing in British Guyana? You know, again, you don't know. Yeah. You know, and then when you go to Google Earth and you look at British Guyana, it's still a third world nation. You're thinking, what was going on back there? Why were they there? Yeah. I don't know. I guess they had to make a living somehow, so.
Who's the most interesting person from your family history?
Oh, that's a tough question because there's so many. I've been lucky enough to get to talk to most of my aunts and uncles, and I can't really name one. I mean, I can think of my Uncle Ed Perry, my Uncle Ernest Perry, my Uncle John Perry, my Uncle Joe Perry, my dad's brothers John and Tony. They all have their own bits of history. They all served. My mom's brothers all served in the military during World War II, and my dad's brothers served in the military during the Korean War. So there was always a fear with my grandparents that they were going to lose a family member somehow, and so it was just hearing them talk about some of the experiences they had at that time. We as my age and younger, we've been very fortunate that we've never had to go fight in a war. And so you have no idea what it's really like to be dealing with the constant fear that today might be your last day. And how do you deal with that? I don't know.
Yeah, it's just something hard to think about almost.
Yeah, it is.
It's very.
And, you know, my Facebook page, I concentrate mainly on local history, but there I also sprinkle in particular historical events. Like I've taken a big interest in the events that happened at Pearl Harbor, talking about what was so terrible about that event and what it did in terms of cauterize the people's interest in terms of supporting the United States in war. I talk a lot about the local history regarding the establishment of Kingston, and how difficult it is to find photos of that. So, I mean, there's just so many. You could take one particular subject in the area and it can just go on for hours in terms of the amount of information you can find, especially with the internet.
What do you think is your favorite historical event that happened in Hanford? Like, you gotta say one story that just is mind-boggling to you.
I'll have to come back to that. Can we come back to that? I'll have to think about that because I would say the one area that I've had a big fascination in and have been very luckily successful in finding facts about is the development of the Tulare Lake Basin from the 1860s to the 1930s. I've been very fortunate to find early photographs of the first farming operations and how they brought in these gigantic electrically powered pumps to pump the lake out in 1912, 1913, 1914, how they brought in the power lines to do that. And it's just incredible amount of machinery that was put down there over 100 years ago. And then in a heartbeat, if we had too much rain or snow, it'd be washed away. You know, Mother Nature go, nope, not going to happen. You know, you think you're going to get rid of this lake, you're not. And so there was a lot of pictures of the lake coming back in the 20s and then in the 30s and then in the 40s. I've been fascinated by that history. It's very difficult to find much of what happened around the Tulare Lake at that time because the lake was a swamp. It was a 600 square mile swamp, and nobody really want to go near that thing. It was full of mosquitoes, and it was very humid in the winter and the summer. But I have found a bunch of really interesting photos of that time frame, and I've put together a very good slideshow that people want me to keep saying and put it out. So anyway.
So that's really one of your specialties, little historical areas that you really know like the most about?
Well, the Tulare Lake, I'm not going to say I'm an expert on, but I have found a lot of interesting stuff. Kingston, I've used the internet with newspapers.com to research all the newspaper articles that ever mentioned the word Kingston, and the stories that came out of there are just unbelievable. The early history of Hanford, the railroad, how it came in, how the second railroad came in, just all the different economic events that changed the Kings County to where it's at today. The discovery of oil, that was huge. And the establishment of the Limo Naval Air Station, that was huge. The development of the Tachi Palace Gaming Center, that was huge. Those are all huge events. The introduction of the large corporate farming down in the Corcoran area with Boswell and Salyer and Gilkey and Hanson, those are all huge farming operations, and they could never have done it anywhere else in the world.
So if you don't mind me asking, what kept you in the Central Valley?
Well, that's a good question, because I could have gone anywhere. I mean, I went to college in Idaho, got a degree in accounting up in Idaho in 1983, and I came back to interview for with a particular firm in Tulare, and I said to myself, if I don't get this job, I'm going to go back to Idaho and try to make a living up there. Well, they hired me, so I stayed, and it's not, I don't regret it. I mean, yeah, I would have liked to have probably gone back to Idaho, but I've been up there recently, and I'm really disappointed on how much that state has been transformed by the migration of people, especially from California up there, because they want to get out of the craziness of California, not realizing they're creating their own level of craziness in Idaho. I wouldn't move there now.
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't go there.
They are the craziness.
They become the crazy. I wouldn't move there now.
Yeah.
Maybe the eastern side of the state I would, but not anywhere around Boise. It's unfortunate. It's been ruined.
So what do you love the most about Hanford?
Well, it's a double-edged sword. I love being able to bump into somebody that you know at any time of the day and have a great conversation. And I hate being able to bump into somebody any time of the day and have a conversation. It just depends on how I feel. I like Hanford because it is off the beaten path. Even today, you have to want to come to Hanford to get to Hanford. It's not a pass-through. You're not on the highway somewhere passing through. It's a destination, and I think it's going to probably be one of the last places that is going to get developed in the Central Valley. Is going to change from a rural to an urban just because of where it's located.
If there was one person from Hanford that you could have a conversation with, who would it be?
Oh, there's several. I would have loved to have spoken with the gentleman that built my office. His name was George Adelot. He had quite an interesting life here when he came to Hanford in 1898, and how he progressed from being an accountant to being he owned the ice plant here in town and did quite well financially. I would love to have been able to talk with probably Sheriff William Van Buckner, who was the first sheriff of Kings County in 1893. Those are the two people that come to mind right now.
If there was one building that is now gone or business that is gone that you would like to see back in Hanford that you really think would benefit the city?
Well, I'm really disappointed that the Hanford High School auditorium building was torn down. It's unfortunate, but that building was doomed from the beginning it was built. And what had happened was that there had been several bond issues that the school district had put out in the late teens and early 20s to build a new high school, and they kept getting defeated because the voters thought that the bond issue was too much. And so they kept cutting down the cost. They finally got one that passed. And then as they're building the building, they ran out of money.
Yeah.
And so they had to do a quick slap together some funds to finish the building out. Well, it wasn't built with the same quality as the other part. So the building, as soon as it was done being constructed, it ended up, one side was deteriorating more than the other.
Yeah.
It was doomed from the beginning. And then with earthquakes in California and different standards, it's unfortunate the building was torn down. Actually, I always say that building was sacrificed to save the balance of the buildings in town. Because since that place has been torn down, I think the only building that has been torn down that I can think of that I thought was a mistake was the Hanford fire station that was next to the public pool. I think that was a mistake, but it's gone now, so not much you can do about it.
I know there's a trend in Hanford. Hanford really doesn't, with the younger people, they don't really see history the same way most of the old, like even with pride in where they come from almost.
Yeah, they don't. I try, I've done some presentations at high school, and I would say if there's a class of 30 people, I think 5 people are really interested, and the other 25 are like, I just got to get through this to whatever else. So that's just the way it is, This is Viola. She's going to get her own 15 minutes of fame here.
So you have some photos with you. Do you want to tell us about those?
Oh, sure. This here is an unusual photo. That is a group of Japanese pilots being posed before they went off into battle. I don't know if they were kamikaze pilots or not, but it's not something that you would find every day. And I haven't put this up on my Facebook page yet because I thought it was too close to Memorial Day. I didn't want to put this up and people get upset with me that, hey, we got all these American soldiers that died and you're showing the Japanese on Memorial Day. So it's coming, okay? And then
that's your little teaser.
Yeah.
So if people want to see that photo in better light, they have to go to follow
Yeah,
your
you have to go Antique Images from the collection of Michael J. Semas. This here is a photo of a hunt that was done in the Mendocino wilds of Big River in 1897. And on the back is everybody identified in the photo. So you can see they have all the deer.
Have the kids up there.
The kids on the stump up there, seeing around there. And that was a really nice find. I was happy to find that. And then this is a group of hunters in San Pedro, California. Now, what's interesting about the view in the background, that's all houses now.
Really?
It's all high-end, very expensive houses. And there they are hunting along the edge of the Pacific Ocean. And you can see them with all their drinking bottles. And
I wonder if any of those bottles are probably still buried there.
Oh, I don't know. That'd be doubtful. And then here's another shot. This is another hunting scene up in Mendocino with everybody hanging out there with their showing off their weaponry. And then I just put this up on Facebook yesterday. This was called the Pleasure Seekers Club in San Francisco, and this was taken in 1899. Wow. And it's a group of men that appear to be partying somewhere in a hotel room in San Francisco. And
gosh, look at that.
Yeah, that's a really cool photo because you don't see much like that.
Even just the rooms compared to what
houses
look like
see,
now.
there's so much to see in there.
Yeah.
You've got the pictures on the wall, the fans, the bottles. It captures a really interesting moment of those gentlemen's lives.
Yeah. So you have to wonder what these people's stories was if they're taking a picture of them partying.
Yeah, I know. See the photographer on the back. You can't see. They barely see the stamp. His name was Wiedner. Wiedner was a very popular photographer at the time in San Francisco. So what was he doing in a hotel room in San Francisco? I have no idea. They had the money to hire the guy to come in to take pictures of them partying in their hotel room.
Which is something taboo to show someone drinking in a photograph like this?
I don't know.
Partying?
I don't know if it's so much drinking. It's just, cameras back then were 20, 30 pounds.
Yeah.
You didn't have your little iPhone to take a picture. No. So somebody wanted to document the fun. And this was what I would consider, I thought this was the find of the trip. These are the Masonic officers of San Francisco taken in 1912, and everybody's name is on the back. And so that is a really cool photo. I was really happy to find that.
The outfits they wear in this are just so...
I can't imagine, first of all, I gotta wonder if those costumes were made after the earthquake of 1906 or whether or not they didn't, I don't know. It's just that each one of them has just an intricate, very intricate costume. And you look at them and you're just like, again, it's a moment in time in which you really have to ask yourself, is it still like this today? I mean, I don't know. Now this was one I found yesterday. And so what that is,
what is that?
that is an interior photo. And if you'll notice, the photographer in the lower corner there is Nichols from Lemoore.
Oh, this.
And so I saw the picture. I knew exactly what that building was on the inside. That's the Oddfellows building in downtown Lemoore.
Oh, not downtown Hanford?
That's downtown Lemoore.
Oh.
See the four arched windows in the back?
Yeah.
That's the four arched windows that face Heinlein Street in Lemoore, where D and Heinlein go. You'll see it's the same windows.
No, this is Oddfellows, right?
Oddfellows.
Okay.
Yeah. And then this is a really, really rare image. I could not believe I even found it. That is the original interior of the Opera House in Hanford.
The one that burned down?
Yep.
Oh my God.
And now, so I haven't had a chance to date it yet, but all the American flags that are in there are 40 star. So when did we have a 40 star flag? That's going to tell me when that picture was taken. It's going to have to be after 1893 because the hotel, that Opera House was, no, 1891. The Opera House was built 1891. So it was between 1891 and 1905 at least. So, but that's a really interesting photo.
It's too bad this building isn't still around today.
The building is still there.
It is?
Yeah, it didn't burn down, it burned.
Okay.
And so when they rebuilt it, they took the stage out and made apartments.
Okay. So it's still the
still there.
facade's still there.
The facade's still there, but it's not
the same on the inside.
an opera house.
That would have been amazing if that was still there on the inside, because just the detail and the craftsmanship you can see on the walls.
But again, that's the type of stuff that I look for.
It has been a pleasure getting to meet you and hear about your collection and just what brought your family's history to Hanford and what drove your collection. It's so amazing to see someone with this passion locally, because you know there's not a lot of people that have that around here. That you don't see it so outward.
Well, there are people like me that have the passion, but they just don't.
There's not a whole lot of them too.
Unfortunately, a lot of people that collect old photography don't like to share what they have.
Yeah.
They're more of a hoarding, and that's just the way they are. I'm not talking bad about it. It's just the way they are. You know, I like to be able to say, yeah, I'd like to see just look what I have, because I've learned something every time that I see it. So if somebody tells me more about the photo.
And just when you share it also, you never know who's going to respond. It might be someone's grandchild.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I could tell a story, but we might be running out of time. But you know, there's that building on Irwin Street that was an old brick hospital that they painted. Everybody talks about. They call it the sanitarium. And so I was able to contact the great nephew of the person who started that place.
I saw when you posted that on Facebook.
Oh, you saw that? Yeah, that's right. Okay. And so the family just doesn't know where there was an aunt that came out from Wisconsin, moved to Kalinga, and then she came to Hanford, and she had the money to build that place, and they don't know where she got the money. Yeah. They don't know what happened. They were like, and then she sold it, and so she built it in 1910, 1911, sold it in 1914, moved to Bakersfield, and died. And so it's just kind of a big mystery in the family trying to figure out what.
And now they've renovated it, and it doesn't look.
I have a brick office. It's got to spend some money to keep it up. And so what they did, the people that bought it, they just painted it.
And the inside too.
And they painted everything. I mean,
everything.
I went through and took pictures of the whole place before the
woodwork looked in good condition.
The woodwork was beautiful.
And they painted over all of it.
Well,
that's just how it goes.
That's the way it is. You know, what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
Better than throwing a match to it, I guess.
Yeah, say that. But it's just been Hanford Auction House's pleasure to be able to interview and just let us into your home and see your amazing collection.
Well, thank you.
That good?
And scene.
We thank you for listening in to this episode of Valley Recollections, and we thank Michael for inviting us into his home. Do you have a loved one who would like to be interviewed? Contact us at Hanford Auction House, See you next time.
This was the day they got taken out of the jail, or they left the jail in San Jose. They went down the street to the souvenir photo place. They sat down and took this group shot, and they've got their names listed at the bottom here. And they sold these photos as fundraisers for themselves.
Oh, wow.
And they sold them. And so it says the Muscle Slough Settlers, and this was the Muscle Slough 5. And they all came back. When they left San Jose, they refused to ride a railroad, so they came back on horseback. And the families all moved to Dinuba. So the families are still there in Dinuba. Their descendants are still in Dinuba. I spoke at Dinuba about 15 years ago, and some of the grandchildren were there who were in their 80s and 90s, and they still hated the railroad. The poor grandchildren carried on the grudge, and they were like, we hate the railroad. So anyway, that's the way it goes. Anyway, so that's probably the neatest find I've ever found. And it's a very difficult photo to find.
Yeah.
Photographic history of all the members of the Oddfellow Lodge in Fresno in 1906.
He sold this to you?
Yeah.
Now that's, I'm shocked.
Yeah, well, he's had it for a couple years.
Yeah.
Now, the pictures that I was really happy to get my hands on were of this man, this man, and that's right here. A.C. Mudge, J.F. Maxwell, and J.L. Aston. They were all photographers.
Really?
They had Maxwell and Mudge were partners in a photography studio in Fresno. So it's really cool to get a picture of the photographers. And plus, I'd sure love to know what all these other guys were.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because it's all just.
And that guy whose photo is
and then like they're in their little outfits. So it's got them in their uniforms. And then this is normally I shy away from. See, Maxwell and Mudge.
Yeah.
They're right there. They took the picture. That's outside the Fresno County Courthouse.
The one they tore down?
Yeah, the one they tore down. Let's not go there.
That's a conversation we want to open up online.
Oh yeah. And then, if you find photos of like this was in front of the courthouse. Any of these temporary structures that were for like conventions.
Yeah.
These pictures are very valuable because they only existed for a couple weeks and they tore it down.
Yeah.
So there's faith, hope, and charity for the three links of the Oddfellows. Yeah, so that was a really cool find. I was real happy to get that. I don't know what I'm gonna do with it. I wanted it for the photographer's photos.
Yeah.
But you think about where that must have been for since 1906.
Probably in someone's attic just sitting up there.